What would be the stupidest thing you think that humanity has come up with? What would be the worst thing you think that we've come up with in total? Whether it be a something you can't afford, something that is discriminatory, something that's expensive, something that's otherwise pain to experience, or something you wish just wasn't there because you yourself feel that it goes against what you think is right. There's all kinds of things that we humans think are wrong or right. What? Some people think that gay marriage is wrong, for example, and other people think gay marriage should be right. People should be free to make their own decisions, really. I don't care if you're homophobic or if you are gay yourself. That's your decision. You're entitled to your own opinion. But you shouldn't go out and slander people for their decisions. That's taken it too far. Whether it be someone of a different culture, say if someone is Muslim and they're not accepted by a certain group because they don't agree with their beliefs. Well, that's racist, and that's unfair. They're just another person. They just don't have the same beliefs. That's all. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. People are entitled to these beliefs. Whether you be Muslim, Jewish, Christian, or atheist, doesn't really matter. You're entitled to what you believe or don't believe. But that doesn't mean you don't accept them for their decision. That's rude. That's insulting. And in a lot of cases, racist. I could tell you a lot about what's happened to me in 19 years that would make people shake their heads and want to come and punch me in the gut. I could tell you a lot of things. We've all been there. We've all done bad things. It's about whether or not you regret making these decisions. For me, it depends on what it was. The bad history I had with secondary school. It depends on the person, whether or not they were annoying me or not. Sometimes I made bad decisions. Sometimes people were mean to me, and I reacted badly. That was my decision, and they were bad decisions. But I can't change the past. The only thing that matters is whether or not I regret it. And it depends on what it was. Say, for example, Joey takes my calculator or something, and I'm not happy with him. I may ask for it back and hope for the best. If he doesn't give it back, then that's his wrongdoing. But I made a good decision to ask him first. That means I haven't retaliated. I'm just asking for him to be a good person and bring it back. Then there's the not so good option, like I could spread rumors of him being a thief, or I could go out of my way to hit him, for example, and that would be a bad decision on my part, and that would make me worse than him. I'm not saying this happened, it didn't, but I'm giving an example. There are good decisions and bad decisions. And they follow us through our entire lives. It's up to you, the person, to decide what is right and wrong. Sometimes there isn't a good decision, but there's always a bad decision. Sometimes it's better to do nothing at all. It's complicated. I believe that nobody is born bad. It's the influences that follow them through their lives that determine whether or not they turn out to be a good or a bad person. It also depends on the decisions that they themselves make. Say, for example, Bob, for example, has abusive parents. He's more likely to turn out to be an abusive parent himself if he has children. That's because he experienced abuse during his childhood, for example. Or say, Mary had a mother who used to steal things. That would mean that she'd be more likely to steal things when she grew up. It's influence that determines whether or not someone is good or bad. Sometimes parents may be too afraid to take on the responsibilities of looking after their children, and they'll distance themselves. Well, that's not a good thing, because then the child has to learn on their own. They don't have a role model to look up to if they're never there. That means that whatever outcome in the end happens, it's going to be totally random, because you can't be sure whether or not they're going to turn out to be a good or a bad person, because they've never learned. They've never learned from the parents. That's probably the worst part of all. You'd rather have someone turn out to be good than have an outcome that would be random, or have them just turn out to be complete arseholes. And nowadays, with all technology and everything, people are learning from the internet, and the internet, it's a wealth of information, absolutely full of it. But in the end, it's also full of it. It's full of shite. It depends on where you're looking, but in the end, you can't just let your child have a tablet, for example, and let them get away with whatever they want. Just give them the tablet, shut up, give me some peace and quiet. Then they're just learning from the internet, a computer. They're not their parent. Oh yes, my parent has a fucking Samsung tablet. How does that make sense? That's even less responsible than not being there at all. I could keep going on and on and on about this, but I am getting bored of this topic as much as you probably are yourself. So, how about this? Finances. Again. It's gone to a point where more homeless people are on the streets. And a lot of the time, they can't help that, because things are getting so expensive, even here in Ireland, that people can't afford a good quality of life. Ireland is not a poor country, not by any means. But if you can't get the money in this country, then you're absolutely screwed. Absolutely screwed. The only way to make a good living is to finish school, make a CV, and hopefully your employer or employer-to-be will take you on and give you a chance. But now things are getting so much more complicated that jobs actually require you to have previous experience. And with so many of those jobs needing that experience, and so little jobs offering that experience in the first place, no one's getting a fucking job, which means no one can get money, which means they're going to live on the streets, which means more homeless people, more debt, poor people on the streets, no jobs. That's not their fault, and there's nothing they can do about it, because our country is completely fucked in the way that it tries to give people opportunities that they may as well just say, here's a free piece of paper, here's a free book. It's not going to make a fucking difference because you're going to be on the streets anyway. If you're lucky, you might get into a council house waiting list of like 15 years. How long do people live? Best part of 80 years. So you grow up, about 20 years old, you apply to get a home for a council house, for example. You could be waiting until you're out 40 to get a house, depending on the state of affairs of the government and of how the council is running things, the debts, the fucking housing availability. They're not building enough houses, which means more people are going on the streets. Because finances are absolute gobshites. That doesn't sound like much sense. How can I call a thing a gobshite? Well, it is. Think about it. Nobody's getting money. And with this fucking virus, nobody has a good quality of life. The way things are, it makes me not want to become a parent myself. It's too complicated, too stressful, and I also have the option of hanging myself, which sounds like more fun than spending a lifetime of stress, poverty, and potential homelessness. I'd rather throw myself off a fucking bridge. I'm not asking you to heed my advice, but hear me out. At least try. Try to do this. Try to get a job. Try to raise your children the best you can. Otherwise, this world is going to be full of more arseholes that don't know what to do when they grow up, and they're just going to end up homeless, abusing substances. You don't know what they're going to be doing. You're going to lose contact. They're going to spend a life of failure if you don't actually give them your time and you don't give them good advice. You're a role model to your children, to your employees, to your friends and family. The least you can do is to give them the time of day, to make an effort. Because if you don't, you're just going to fail. And I know there are a lot of people who won't be able to succeed, even if they try. But that itself is down to whoever runs the country. And that itself is down to the employers of businesses. That itself is down to the parents. That itself is down to the people around them who make these decisions themselves. It's depressing. Almost 100 years since the Great Depression. We've read about that. We've all read about that in books and to the internet. We all know how that went. No smoking outside the house, huh? I can't exactly help it. Charger cable. This phone is on 10%. Sure, I'll leave you with this. Give your children, your employees, and your family the time of day that they need to get by. Because otherwise they're going to fail. They're going to fail hard. They need support, and you're the only people who can give it to them.